There we go. Hello and welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's March 14th. This is the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority JPA meeting. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Corrigan?
Here.
Vice Chair Abikoga?
Here.
Director Grilly?
Here.
Alternate Director Yulo?
Here.
Director Smith?
Here.
Director Miller?
Here.
Director Rennie?
Here.
Director Gibbons? Here. Director Bruins? Here. Director Craig? Here. And I will note that Director Sinks, Director Harney, and Director Cortese are absent.
Thank you. The next item is public comment. If there's members of the public here who'd like to make any comment, I'll give you up to 3 minutes to speak on any issue not on the agenda. However, the JPA board may not take action on that item tonight. We do have the ability to agendize it at a future meeting. I'd ask that you do fill out a speaker card if you're interested in speaking. Those speaker cards are available out in the lobby. Anybody here wishing to make any comments tonight? Just by way of order, I'm going to run the meeting so that we'll have the presentation of the item. It'll be presented by the staff or member appropriate. Then from that point, we'll have Q&A from the dais so that members of this board can clarify any misunderstandings they have or make sure they fully understand the topic. Once that's finished, I'll open up for public comment. Then close public comment and bring the discussion back up here for the dais, and we'll make decisions and hopefully move forward. Everybody good with that? Don't hesitate to raise your hand, and if I miss you and you want to speak, Margaret will be on the lookout as well. All right, with that out of our way, I'd like to move on to the consent calendar. Are there any items people need to remove from today's consent calendar?
I move the consent calendar.
We need to check with the audience.
You can do that in either order.
I think we're okay. If I have a motion and a second,
Just double check there's nobody from the audience that wants to speak.
is there anyone from the audience who wishes to speak? Hearing none and seeing none. I have a motion and a second. Can I call for the vote, please? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Thank you. Motion passes. Tonight, we'll start with item number 2 on the regular calendar to adopt a resolution to approve the SVCE rate schedules effective April 1st of 2018. The presentation will be made by our new CEO. Actually, it looks like Dawn's going to make our presentation, but I'm going to start with you and let you get us off to a good start on this topic. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Corrigan and members of the board. I'll introduce myself a little bit more when it's my turn. As far as this item, you have discussed this, I believe, at least on 2 occasions before, just in terms of setting the framework. We do have a timeline. We intend to implement these rates starting April 1. So we have a few options in front of you. And once we get your direction tonight, we'll be working furiously to get all the rates computerized and so that that can be implemented starting April 1. Don Bray has given the previous presentations on this, and after his presentation, we'll be open for questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Garish. Thank you, Chair Corrigan, and good evening, directors. As you know, we've had several discussions on 2018 rates to date, going all the way back to August of last year. There have been a lot of twists and turns in PG&E's projections from last summer all the way through December. In late February, they came out with their official rates for 2018. So we now have that as a basis to make a very specific proposal and to present some very specific alternatives here tonight. And as Garish mentioned, we hope that we'll be able to settle on our 2018 rates here tonight. So when the rates were initially projected last August, we thought that PG&E was going to be reducing their rates in 2018, and that sent us into a spin. As you recall, we realized that we would have to reduce our rates for 2018 to remain competitive, to remain below PG&E. So we were projecting rate decreases for 2018. We factored that into our financial plan for 2018, and we've been operating on that basis ever since. With the release of PG&E's rates in February, we now see a very significant increase in rates. And what that means is that if we maintained our rates exactly as they were throughout all of last year, we would add back all of that margin that we thought we were going to lose this year having to reduce rates. It's an amount of about $13 million. In addition, we would open up a very significant delta between us and PG&E rate-wise. We'd go between 6 and 9% savings compared to PG&E versus the 1% we were at last year. So comparatively, a very different picture than we thought we were going to be seeing in August of last year. We had originally planned not to increase rates unless there were exceptional conditions. We are starting to see some exceptional conditions, and I'll touch on that in a second. With this as background, the executive committee met, reviewed a staff proposal, and is recommending what we're calling the all 6% option. This is a 6% across-the-board discount this year relative to PG&E rates, and it's felt that this will do a nice job of balancing recovery of some additional revenue to compensate for some new risks and costs that we're facing with maintaining rate stability, mitigating risk, and maintaining good customer savings. So in terms of this changing financial context, probably the biggest single impact was Resolution E4907. Remember, this was a surprise that we faced in December. This means that we're going to be paying more for resource adequacy to bring on Milpitas. The amount has bounced around a little bit, but it looks like it's settling in around 3.7 or 3.8 million for this year. This is an unanticipated cost. It's about 4 times what we paid for RA for the rest of our portfolio. This is an exceptional cost. We won't see this kind of price increase for RA in the future, hopefully, but it is assumed by our supply folks that the market for RA will be tightening and will likely be paying more for RA in general in the future. In addition, AB 1110 is the new rules that were passed last year. They're being detailed out this year, but these are going to change exactly how renewables are accounted for and how GHG accounting is done for renewables. And it may mean that PCC2 is going to have carbon associated with it in the future. And if we want to remain carbon-free, we may have to shift our portfolio in the direction of PCC1, which means additional cost. Looking at positions that are outstanding, if we were starting to move in that direction, that would mean another 1.3 million for PCC1 versus 2 in 2018, 7.1 million in 2019, and 10.3 million in 2020. So between what we're paying in addition for RA and this potential change in the cost of carbon-free power, we are seeing some costs that we didn't anticipate last fall as we were first thinking about rates. And then the one final note there, PCIA proceeding is in process. There's no real telling where that's going to come down, but there could certainly be cost impacts from that as well. Oops. Sorry about that. Let's talk about how our rates are set. This is an important chart to understand, especially for those of you that are newer to it, because this is going to help you understand the various options we're looking at. If you look at the 2 vertical bars on the left for the year 2017, the rightmost of those, that represents the PG&E generation rate. On the left, there's the SVCE generation rate, and then the PG&E exit fee, or PCIA. You put the 2 of those together, and then the 1% savings, that equals the PG&E gen rate. So the way we calculated rates, we took the PG&E gen rate, multiplied by 99%, subtracted the PCIA, and that's how we got our rate. That's how we did the math last year. Now, what's happened in 2018 is, if you look over on the right 2 vertical bars, the the PG&E generation rate went up by a lot, again, on the order of 9+%. The PCIA also went up, okay? So if we did nothing, if we left our rates exactly where they were last year, our customers are going to be paying a little bit more because of the increase in the PCIA. That's part of the bill. So that's an important thing to understand. If we do nothing, our customers are going to be paying a little bit more. But at the same time, we're opening up a bigger gap relative to what the cost would be with PG&E. So customers will pay 4% more, but they're saving an additional 6% or so relative to PG&E. Before I move on, any questions on this?
Don, I have one question on the slide before. The numbers that you gave for PCC1 in the third circle, open circle bullet, we originally had talked about being 50% hydro. Is this making up all of our 50% renewable with PCC1, or we'd also talked about buying more than 50% hydro, and I'm unsure where this fits in there. Is this something more than 50% hydro with these numbers, or this to bring it up to 50%?
So my understanding of this scenario was that the 1.3 million would be our open position for PCC2 this year. We'd buy PCC1 instead. Same for 2019 and 2020. So at no change in the original assumption, it would be, at least under this projection, stay at 50% hydro, 25% PCC1, plus moving the PCC2 in the direction of PCC1. Did I get that right, Dennis?
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Good question. And the reason it grows is because we're already committed for PCC2, and we can't change that, but we're only bought out a few years on it, so the open positions could be filled with PCC1. Okay, and we're good on this chart? Mm-hmm. All right. I guess one final point I'd make here is that I'm always talking in averages, so this, the numbers that you see here, 9% increase, 3% in PCIA, 6% in savings, it's an average. There are 40 different rate schedules, 179 rate components. Every one of them is a little different, but this is a pretty, well, this is an average, and it's fairly representative. In terms of thinking about the different options that we're going to look at, we want to think about criteria. You know, what would make a good rate schedule for us. Ideally, we can meet the original SVCE target for contribution to reserves. Ideally, we can recover some additional revenue to deal with the increase in costs for RA and the PCC2 to PCC1 migration. Ideally, we could minimize the number of rate increases we have to impose on customers. It'd be nice if we could keep our rates where they were in 2017, ideally. If we do have to raise rates, we want to avoid price gouging or dramatic increases to customers if we can help it. We would like to increase savings versus PG&E for all customers. Moving off of 1% makes us that much more compelling to customers perhaps that have opted out. Maybe we can bring them back. Helps us keep the customers we have. And we'd like to have an approach that balances savings across the different rate schedules and customer classes. We don't really want one customer class to be getting all the benefit and another one not. So that was an important value that was expressed by several people on the board as we've been through these discussions before. In December, we went through 3 scenarios. Remember this long conversation we all had? We looked at a scenario, and I'll point at scenario 1 here, where we would set a minimum level of rate savings. We try to keep rates exactly where they were in 2017 unless keeping the rate at that level wouldn't earn us at least a certain percentage savings relative to PG&E. So we decrease rates where necessary and only where necessary to maintain a certain differential relative to PG&E. So we call those the min scenarios. Second scenario is the absorb PCIA scenario. And what this is, if you remember the stacked bars, this would be reducing our rates in 2018 to absorb the increase in the PCIA that PG&E imposed. And what this means is A customer in 2018 with us would pay exactly what they paid in 2017, inclusive of the PCIA. So keeping our customers exactly where they were cost-wise from year to year. The third option, peanut butter approach, is taking a set percentage, applying it to all rate schedules and rate components, and very much like we did last year with 1%. So looking at a number of different options, applying that same basic methodology. We also, and again, this was at board direction, we want to look at the impact of our rate changes to our major rate schedules, the rate schedules that most of our customers have and that represent the most revenue to SVCE. So by far the three most impactful is the E1 residential tiered rate. Almost 200,000 of our 245,000 customers are on this rate, and it's about 33% of our load. The next biggest by number is small commercial, A1, and it's about 10% of our load, 18,000 customers. And finally, large commercial, only 1,200 customers, but 25% of our load. So we're using these three rates, and the analysis that we present shows the impact of our various options relative to these three rates. And between them, they represent, 80 or 90% of our load in our accounts. Any questions? Okay, good.
Please, go ahead.
Sure. So you're talking averages, but I'd rather not talk in averages for the E1. So is that going to be 6% less than PG&E?
So if we did nothing, the E1 rate, and this is a very good question, we're going to talk a lot about this, would be 5.7%. That's what the delta would be relative to PG&E, including the PCIA.
And then there's the problem area. Well, my perception of problem area, I'd love to get a couple of large industrial customers. And you didn't mention the E20. What would that rate difference be?
It maps really closely to E19.
Okay.
And this is a perfect question for the next slide, because
Thank
we
you.
can, unless there are any other questions on this one. So what I'm going to do is go through three different scenarios here: min 6%, the absorb, and the all 6%, and just try to quickly move from left to right so you can see how these things compare. Again, if we established our rates for next year such that customers save at least 6%, we change very few 2017 rates except where necessary. We would add $13.4 million back to our operating reserves. This essentially recovers what we thought we were going to have to give up in terms of reduced rates for this year. Our average customer savings would be about 7.5%. We would have no increases in gen rates, and we would decrease 26 rates. Okay, so this scenario means we don't increase any of our rates relative to where we were in 2017. Kind of keeps the promise, as it were. If you look over on the right, the first row, SVCE savings versus PG&E, this is just comparing us generation cost-wise in 2018 versus PG&E. The second row, SVCE customer cost change, again, the customer is going to see a little bit of an increase because the PCIA went up. So it's looking at it from a customer perspective and then relative to PG&E. So for our E1 customer, they would save 6% in this scenario relative to PG&E by being with us, but their costs are going to go up about 4% next year because of the PCIA.
I heard that.
Okay, and then you can see how it plays out for A1 and E19. Interestingly enough, the business customers, and especially the large commercial customers, would be saving more relative to PG&E, and we'll see less of a percentage increase next year, again, if we didn't increase any rates. Okay, shall I keep moving? So absorbed PCIA, much smaller operating margin increase here, about half of what the Min 6 was, only 6.6 million. So this would get us kind of half of the money back that we had originally thought we'd have to reduce last September. We would not have any rate increases. We'd decrease virtually all of our rates. The average customer savings versus PG&E would be in the 9% range, and the customer cost change would be 0%. Again, that's how this scenario is defined. That's how we set it up. And finally, the all 6 scenario, this would involve increasing some rates, okay? And it would add about 20 million back in operating margin. So the 13 that we thought we'd hope to keep plus an additional 7, so about 20 in total. We'd have to increase 153 of our rate components. We would decrease 26. Interestingly enough, one of the rates we would decrease would be the E1 by just a little bit. The impacts looking across to the right, of course, the savings for all customer classes relative to PG&E, 6%. That's how this scenario is designed. And what's also kind of interesting about this one is that the cost to the customer, so costs they have in 2017 versus 2018, 3.5% to 4% across all of the major rate schedules, residential, small commercial, and large commercial. Okay. All right, so if we look at these 3 options versus the criteria that we defined earlier, you can see how they peg out here. In terms of meeting the original SVC target for contribution to reserves, Min 6 and All 6 both do that. PCIA only gets us halfway there, the absorbed PCIA. In terms of contributing additional revenue to offset our increased costs of RA and the bucket 1 transition, only the All 6 option produces additional revenue, produces an additional 7 million or so. In terms of minimizing the number of rate increases, Min 6 and absorbed PCIA do that, but All 6 doesn't. We would have to increase rates under All 6, primarily for some of the commercial rate schedules, but not for E1. In terms of avoiding price gouging, I wouldn't say any of these involve us increasing rates by a lot. So we thought all 3 of these would meet that criteria. All 3 give us good savings relative to PG&E, and absorbed PCIA and All 6 are pretty balanced in terms of the result, residential versus small commercial versus large commercial, whereas Min 6 is tilted pretty much in the direction of large commercial. Okay, so by the end of all of this, we're moving in the direction of a recommendation for All 6. In conversation since the executive committee meeting, there was also a suggestion, what would this look like for a residential customer? And this is kind of a good way of summarizing it. I apologize for how complicated this slide is, but if you look at 2017, this is the SVCE costs versus PG&E. The top row, which is grayed out there a little bit, the $56, that's transmission and distribution. That's the same for us or PG&E across the board. Actually goes up a tiny bit, 1 penny in 2018. But then if we look at the next row, the generation costs, $30.43 for us, $44.28 for PG&E in 2017. But you have to add in the $13.40 for PCIA. And when you put those 2 together, our comparison versus PG&E in 2017 was $99.91 for the average residential customer with us versus $100.36 for the average PG&E customer, savings of about 50 cents a month with that 1% delta that we had last year. Us versus PG&E, about $6 a year for the average residential customer. If you look over on the right, this would be with the All 6 factored in. I won't go through the details, but you do see the generation rate going down a tiny bit from for us from 2017 to 2018. And when you look at the bottom line, we open up about a $3 a month delta between us and PG&E, or $35 to $40 a year in that range, savings for the average residential customer. So it starts to become a material number.
Yes.
Don, in the all six, it says that there will be 153 rate increases and 26 decreases. So does this, because you're showing this and this is an E1, does that mean that E1 happens to be one of those 26?
Yes, it is.
Thank
It
you.
is one of those, yeah, and it's a fractional decrease. As you can see, $30.43 to $30.29. It's about 0.3%.
Yes, Rob, excuse me.
So maybe I'm not understanding something, but I thought all six meant 6% below after everything was factored in, and 101 to 104 doesn't look like 6% to me, it looks like 3%.
It's because it's the generation rate. So it's looking at the
The
generation.
6% is the generation rate, it's not,
Yes,
Not
it's
the
not
rate.
generation plus PCIA?
right.
No, it is with PCIA, right?
It's with PCIA, but it's not with transmission and distribution. That's up on the top.
Or delivery, as it says here.
Yeah.
But those are the same, so, oh, I see that, that's diluting the percent difference, okay, I got it.
So in real round numbers, $50 T&D, $50 generation, 6% savings, half of that, yeah. So it winds up being about half, if you will, of that 6%, 3% savings at the bottom line.
Are there any other questions? Are
Okay.
you almost done, or?
Very close.
Oh, fantastic.
This
I don't
is
mean
it.
to rush you. I just wanted to give you time to finish.
Okay, so recommendation here, again, in summary, while all six requires some modest rate increases, mostly for commercial accounts, it helps us meet our original target for contribution to reserves. It provides an additional $7 million to help offset the new RA costs and the bucket 2 to bucket 1 transition. It expands our savings to 6% versus 1% for all rates, and doesn't gouge our customers. And it balances impacts nicely across all major rate classes in terms of the absolute price increase of about 4% that our customers would see next year with the PCI impact included. So that's all I have. I have some numbers here around the 5% option, as Girish mailed out earlier today, which we can talk through if we want to. But that's it for my comments right now.
Are there any questions about the presentation? Yes.
So Green Prime, the delta's going to remain the same, but what does it look like relative to PG&E?
Okay, so I'm going to be doing this off the top here, but it adds about 0.8 cents per kilowatt hour. So it would be probably, if there's a $3 difference for this, it's going to be about what, $4 an increase? Yeah, it winds up being pretty close to the cost of PG&E, maybe a little bit more, yeah.
So we're almost to the point where PG&E's base offering and our Green Prime become the same.
They'd be pretty
Almost.
close. Yeah, and that's going to vary quite a bit by rate class, but because the residential rates are a little higher than commercial, but for residential, yeah, it's going to be pretty close.
Director Bruins.
I am interested in seeing what you can show us in terms of the 5%. I think, and the CEO's email to all of us giving us information. I am one of the board members that inquired about this, so I think I would like to see that before we go to public comments. And
Perfect.
the public can also see it.
Could we run through the 5%
Yes.
scenario as well?
And since you're so experienced in what these charts look like now, this will be fast. So 5% gives us 24 million versus 20.5 million, so an additional 3.7 million in contribution margin this year. If we look at the number of rate increases we'd be making 176 rate increases versus only 3 decreases. We would be increasing the residential rate by, the E1 by 0.7%. If we look over here to the right, again, 5% across the board in terms of savings relative to PG&E. And essentially the numbers go up about a percentage point from what you saw was 6%. So 5.14% would be the average increase a residential customer would see on the generation bill with us this year, and 4.45 and 4.95 for small commercial and large commercial. So those are it's the way that the dollars lay out. In terms of a summary, let's try to hit the differences here. With all 5% versus all 6, we would add about $3.7 million in contribution margin. That would accelerate the date at which we would meet our target reserve of about $112 million next year, which is second half, by about a month. So it gets us there a little sooner. And other than that, it's a lot like all 6. In terms of cost to our customers, all our customers will see about a 5% increase with the PCIA factored in versus a 4% with the all 6% option. We would have to increase rates slightly to residential customers as part of this. And then finally, in terms of rate competitiveness, we didn't see a massive difference here between 6% and 5%. Customers should be, compelled by either one of those. So really, it comes down to rate increases to residential, and taking everybody from, say, 4% cost increase to a 5% cost increase. That's really where the all 5 versus all 6 comes out.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
So go back to your magic slide where you just did the math in your head, the one that shows, the one that we don't have, that one. So when you're looking at a 5%, what do those two bottom numbers look like in terms of our green number compared to the PG&E number?
So it would knock about 50 cents, or it'd add about 50 cents to us. So it would take it to 102.18, something like that.
Okay.
Round numbers. So rather than a $3 a month savings, it takes it to about two and a half, something like that.
All right, any other questions before I open it for public? Yes, please. I will. I thought would you like me to do it now? I'd be happy to do it now. Okay, so if I may, I just wanted to add a little color out of the discussion that happened in the executive committee. If somebody will help me with the slides, that would be great. So the slide that shows the comparing options with the check marks, the 3 columns, the objectives, yeah, right there. I think one of the most important things that came out of our discussion was a reminder that if you were to prioritize these 6 items, number 1 and number 2, as listed on this form, would probably be the 2 most important in most of our minds. So we felt like the all 6 really helped address those 2, and it also only had 1 missing check, whereas the other 2, the Min 6 and the Absorb PCIA, both had 2 missing check marks or had more failures in our sort of tests or analysis of it. And I think overall, the committee came to the realization that while we would see modest rate increases for some of the 179 customer groups, they would be minimalized compared to the Min 5, and they would also still realize a fairly large savings relative to PG&E, at least an average. We were looking at around 3%. So we felt like that was a great scenario. If I'm missing anything, Director, feel free to jump in. Not green on the dashboard. Oh.
Does that not work? Yeah,
Sorry, we're having a technical moment here.
Here you go. Here, Liz. Oh, got it. Thanks. So the one thing that I thought was a very good discussion was the difference between the 5 and the 6 in terms of the amount of money that we would be generated that would go into the building up of our reserves was about $3.5 million, something like that, and it only accelerated it by a month or so. And that meant that it was the kind of thing where price gouging wasn't exactly a perception, but we didn't want to have a perception that we were retaining too much money. We didn't think that that was enough of a money. We felt that giving the 6% savings to the customer was a more positive message for our organization, reflecting our fiduciary obligations. So I thought that was a very positive discussion.
Perfect summary. Are there any other comments from the executive committee that between me and Director Gibbons we might have missed? So with that, I'd like to open it to members of the public. If you're here and we would like to speak on this topic, welcome to the podium.
Hi, Bruce Carney. Good to be with you again. I have two comments. I'm very supportive of the all options, all 5 and all 6. What we have now is the all 1. That was our founding pricing strategy. And it was sufficient to persuade most people to take a chance on this new agency, and they've been rewarded a little bit. And I can understand why you would like to increase the reward that you give them, but two things I want to particularly note. If you go with one of the all options, you have a very easy thing to communicate. You all saved 1% last year, you're all going to save X% this year. And so that alone, I think, is so much clearer than the other things that go into pricing electricity. I've been tracking my electricity for 30 years, and I can still barely figure out why I get charged, what I get charged, and why it changes so often. And it isn't just your price, it's seasonal factors, it's all sorts of stuff. But the other thing I wanted to say is to ask you to look a year out and to decide whether you can sustain or increase whatever discount you decide to offer this year. Imagine, if you will, you go to all 6, and then a year from now, things have changed for the worse, and you have to back it off to an all 3 or an all 4. This would be a really bad thing. This would be the kind of thing that this would be the kind of thing that would get covered by the Mercury News, unlike every other decision you've made for the last 2 years, which hasn't been covered. And so I would encourage you to err on the side of caution and sustainability. I would say that given the information that's been presented to you so far and that I've heard, an all 5 is a less risky approach. There may be things that you know about future procurement prices, trends that I don't know about that would make you feel comfortable that next year you could go with 6 again or go to 7 or even 8 and still fund programs. But from the information that's available to me, I think all 5 is the right choice.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this topic? Hearing none and seeing none, I'm going to bring the conversation back up here. Who would like to go first? Please, Howard.
I'm only going first because I don't have an answer, so I'll preface it with that. But I want to just point out a couple of things. A lot of our customers actually never realized that they even switched from PG&E, and they're not looking at some esoteric, if I was with PG&E, my bill would have gone up by this amount on this line. What they're going to see is the bill that they get and how much that has gone up. And so we're all excited about being 5% or 6% under PG&E. What they're going to see is they're going to be 4% or 5% higher than they were last year. And both of those, no matter which scenario that's on the table, both of those are greater than the rate of inflation and greater than the rate of wage growth. So that means for our customers, they're going to see less money in their pocket. And I don't even know what the whole communication plan is, because how do you communicate to somebody that I'm raising your rates, but you're better off than what you would have had with PG&E that you didn't realize you weren't on anymore? So I would probably like to hear from staff about how we plan to explain this to the average customer. And as for the two options, honestly, between 5 and 6, it's 6 of one, half dozen another for me, and I'll go wherever you guys want to go. But I am
Can you say
very
the last
worried-
part again? It's 6 of one and a half of another, but what, you feel either way between the all 5 or all 6?
I will support wherever people want to go with that because I believe they are so similar. I think the fundamental issue is we're raising the rates for customers, and we're going to have to be able to explain that in both an absolute sense and maybe even a relative to PG&E sense. And we're probably, for many, going to have to rehab the whole discussion of how did they end up with us anyway.
Terrific. Who else? Anybody else? Director Bruins.
So first, I want to say thank you for looking at the all 5 and being able to actually present it versus dealing with it in real time. The other thing is I also want to applaud both the executive committee and the staff because there's something that works extremely well here, which is that ability to kind of influence and such, because I think as Don, I think you presented, I think it's in the staff packet, you know, you started off with looking at a min alternative, and then through this collaborative discussion, you end up with the all. So I want to say I agree with the all, okay? And then I'm going to say I actually feel fairly strongly about I would like to do the 5%. I think Mr. Carney did an excellent job stealing some of the words off of my page here, so I don't know if there's a camera up above. But, you know, I think when we look at this, we're still in startup mode. We haven't even been delivering into the homes and into the businesses for a full year yet. I think even in this 1 year, we've seen a lot of things that are been thrown at us. And, you know, I think everything that's been thrown at us so far, I think we've been really fortunate because we've been in a position to be able to deal with it, okay? And I think we have a lot to be proud of. We paid back our loans, you know, whether it's to the cities, you know, our bank stuff. But I think it's time to start erring a little bit more cautiously. We don't have the safety net underneath us. So if something starts going really haywire, so even though it sounds like a little tiny thing of accelerating our original schedule by 1 month, I honestly believe there are more unknowns. And our legislative person over there, I mean, is, you know, the fact that she's not pulling out her hair sometimes with what she's chasing. I think we really owe it to our customers to make sure that we are an extremely well-managed organization. And then, so I would like to say, if I were to make the motion, I'm going to make the motion for all 5, but I won't make the motion until we hear everybody else. And in terms of Mr. Miller, your comments and such, I think it would be valuable to hear what our marketing campaign, or what we're going to be saying. But I would caution all of us. We've been known to go into the weeds before in terms of, you know, what exactly, and I just would like to remind all of you, and Howard, you did hit on this already, but we know so much more than the average person out there. So we should not, this is why we have a marketing department, because left to our own devices, we up here tend to be overly analytical and tend to want to, you know, how do we do this and how do we do this? I think the message is pretty, in my mind, it's going to be pretty simple, pretty clear, okay? But anyway, if we can maybe
Sounds like you're pushing
hear a
for all
word or
5.
two, but I want 5.
Yeah, so I completely concur, and with all due respect, I plan to keep the conversation up here on this agenda item. Are we going with the min rate of all 5, all 6, or other? So far, I've heard from 2 people. I'd like to hear some more. How about you?
Okay, thank you. So I'll start off by saying Mr. Carney did steal some words off my page also. The first thing I thought about is, what is this going to look like in the future? If you recall, we thought 6 months ago PG&E was going to lower their rates, and we were really worried. We're kind of lucky that they raised them 9% because it gives us more options. And it also sort of says to me, our costs are not the same as PG&E's, and we may not track with PG&E. My worry is they've raised 9% next year. Maybe they can lower it 2%. And if PCIA goes up, now we're stuck going, we don't have as much flexibility if we go with the 6. I'm arguing more for 5. Give us a little more flexibility, because I'd like to, over time, give this impression that we are increasing the amount, staying the same or increase the amount below PG&E. I would hate to see us oscillating. One year we're 6, the next year we've got to go to 3% below PG&E. You know, maybe it will show up in the Mercury News, but I'm just looking at the perception out in the future, and I'd like to have a little more reserve so we can continue this picture long term. I mean, if you're an investor, you like to see continued earnings growth. You don't want to see it go up a lot one year. That's great. And then the next year it goes down. That doesn't look so good. And I kind of think that the same way here. We're talking about covering our RA costs because we got this surprise. Well, we only bought RA for Milpitas for half of the year. The rest of our RA we got at a much lower rate. What's going to happen when we start trying to get RA? It looks like there's an escalation in RA costs, so we may be guessing wrong at what our costs are going to be in the future. There's a lot of uncertainty there. We've also lost our flexibility, and when we first started this, we said we were going to be 50% renewable, but we said no problem. We've got the option of going to get PCC2. We even said we had the option of going to PCC3. That helped get some PCC2 to show up in the market for us when it had disappeared. All of a sudden, we don't have those options anymore, and PCC1 is a lot more expensive. It's like $18 compared to $7 for 2, I think, and 1 or 2 or 3 for 18. So it's a much different cost. The reason we're not going to have those options in the future is one of the bills that's on there now is saying you can't even count PCC3 on your label at all. And then they're going to start, they're talking about PCC2, all of the firming and shaping, which is most likely gas, now has to show up on your tag as to how much carbon you have. And if we're trying to stay carbon free, we need to stay away from PCC2. So what I'm trying to say is from when we originally made our plans, our flexibility is dropping. Our costs are appearing in places that we didn't expect them to appear. The cost of hydro as more CCAs come online may go up, right? Because everybody, as they're trying to get to be more carbon free, the demand for hydro may go up. We're not seeing it yet, but that's a potential risk in the future, is even our other half of our energy procurement should go up also. So I would like to go with the MEN 5.
All 5 or MEN 5?
The all 5 instead of the all 6.
Thank you.
Don't want to confuse it anymore.
Nope.
I'll say with the all 5, just to give us that safety margin. We can always adjust next year if, again, we're blown way past our savings rate. Another thing to consider is other, just to put a little bit in contrast, I know we're not in competition, but PCE is at 5% below, and they're not even at 100% carbon free. If we're 5% below, we're the same as them, and we're carbon free. I guess maybe I'll stop there. I've been talking for a while.
I hear you're in complete support of all 5. So I've had 2 directors say they're in support of all 5. Is there anyone at the dais right now who feels strongly about all 6 and would like to make a pitch for all 6? Liz. Sorry, I am trying to be more formal. Director Gibbons.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, the nuke technology and the screens aren't working for me. Thank you. I am supportive of Alt 6. I appreciate the dialogue we're having here at the board. The executive committee went into about 2 hours worth of this discussion, and we went through every single option. And you're seeing the fruit of it, as Director Bruins has said, working with the staff. So the reason I'm supportive of Alt 6, they had one more slide, I don't know if you have it tonight, that showed how we're building up the reserve and the projection of the reserves getting built up. So you don't have it. Okay, sorry, didn't think of it. There was a chart, and I believe what it showed is that for a new organization, we're reaching our reserve. And what was the reserve for 3 months, 6 months? What was our reserve?
So the reserve is for half a year.
Okay.
That's the target, is half a year, and then the boundaries, if you remember how it works, is 25% or 75% of that amount. That middle amount next year, 2019, I believe is about 112 million, and we should achieve that by second half next year, really under either scenario. PCC, or excuse me, all 5 gets you there a little sooner, a month sooner.
And if I recall, the diagram also showed that we are going to be continuing to build reserve after that midpoint. It's that was the slide that convinced me that saying we're 6% below, I think, really is a strong consumer message. I thought that was excellent. I didn't think the $3 million buildup, getting there a month sooner, was as significant, because the reserve is going to continue to build for the second 6 months of the year, and we're going to end up at $140 million. So my angst about the risk factor, which I do not disagree with anything that's been said, is less, because we're going to exceed our reserve. And I thought it was a much more positive message for us to say we're doing a good job, and we're not taking all your money. We're watching our P's and Q's, but we have a good trajectory to have protection. So that's in a nutshell. I think it's going to get more than what we need to have a reserve at using all 6.
Thank you, Director Gibbons. I know Director Smith has been waiting, and then you, Director Yulo, and you, Alternate Chang.
Yeah, I appreciate the commentary about all 5. We did consider it, and we did spend some time balancing the concerns. And to me, option 6, with the all 6, balances the concerns in a way I'm comfortable with. I like that the rates are more comparable across the residential and the corporate, with that 4% increase, more or less across the board, with especially and also I do like that we have a mix of rate increases and rate decreases as well, and we still add 13 million to our reserves, which I think is prudent without being accused of price gouging. So we did balance all those things. It wasn't that we didn't consider the messaging as well. I do think that that's important, but I believe that can be managed, and I support the option 6.
Thank you, Director Smith. Director Yulo.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Carney, I'm always going to say Harney instead of Carney, really actually shook me up. He really gave us some good food for thought. And after his comments and Mr. Miller's comments, I really can see no argument for the all 5 anymore. And here's the deal from my perspective, is that Mr. Miller pointed out, what are we going to tell people? When we look at the 198,000 plus residential customers that we have, with the all 6, we can tell them we did not raise our rate for them. We cannot say that with the all 5. So when the phone rings, the all 6 gives us something to say that the all 5 does not. With Mr. Carney's comment, I could almost make an argument for sticking with the all 1, which would increase, I believe the increase over our baseline budget would be over $30 million instead of 20 or 24. But it would put us in a position of not having to say all of a sudden we went from 6 to 4 or 6 to 3 or 6 to 2. We'd stay at 1. I mean, it's an easy story to tell. We haven't changed our tune. We're 1% less than PG&E. And if we're concerned about building up a reserve too early at that pace, which is a valid concern, if the risk fears are unwarranted, it turns out, we could consider a rebate program or some other incentive program, or write people a check. Heck, people wouldn't mind. So I really would consider an all 1 or the all 6, but I can see no argument for the all 5 tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. And Director Chang, please.
Can I ask what is our goal for the reserve? How much?
So the overall goal for the reserve is to build up a steady state reserve.
Right, I
that-
understand. I didn't need to know
that's-
the number.
Yeah,
What
that's
is-
50%, well, it's 112 million is the reserve target. We should achieve that in the second half of 2019. And that's exactly half of what our operating costs in a year would be.
So
and
the
so
goal, the timeline, I'm sorry, I need a just quick answer, okay. So the timeline is 2019.
Second half 2019, yeah, second half.
Second
next
and
year.
half is in July or in December?
You start to, it looked like it was going to be more towards the end of the year at the current pace. Don may have to help me on this.
Okay,
Okay, I'm getting nods, so,
sure.
yeah.
All right, that's all I need to know, because from my point of view, this organization is, in my view, is in the infancy stage. And the infancy stage, you need a nutrition. So if you don't have money and if you're running out of reserve, then we'll be in trouble. So I was instructed to go for 06 before I walk in here, but after after all this consideration, I would go for 05. Okay, of course, then I have another explanation to Rod after a year.
Super. Before I get to you, is there anyone else who has not spoken yet? Yes.
Yes. Thank you for,
Your mic.
it should be on.
Yes, it is.
Maybe I'm not close enough to it. I looked at the all 5 and the all 6 as well, and I think both of them help us achieve our mission, which is to reduce the carbon and to provide clean energy. I also agree that, we are in the infancy of our business, and I've vouched for almost 2 years now that we should always have the business factors in mind, and we're a very young company, and we're a young authority and agency, and we'll be facing increased competition. And not just increased competition from PG&E and from other suppliers, but we're going to be facing increased pressure on the supply side, and that's going to drive up the cost of the product we're trying to sell. I also want to make sure that we can ensure rate stabilization, and so when I took all of this into consideration, I too opted for the all 5%. However, one of the concerns that we had in Gilroy was to protect our constituents who happen to have the lowest median income of everyone in the county. And our constituents aren't the most savvy when it comes to energy and looking at their bill. And so for that, I think I'm going to be voting for the all 6, simply because it provides more savings to our constituents, and it hits all of the missions that we're trying to accomplish as an agency.
Thank you. If I can, are there any comments from anyone else who's not spoken yet? Yes?
I think I'm one of the last ones to speak. I support the all 6, and mainly from what some of the others have said in terms of rates for residential, that we can minimize or the increases there. But I also was trying to compare it with the minimum 6, the original comparison. And so if we had done minimum 6, some of the rates or some of the savings would be much greater than 6%. And some of them could reach 7, 8, or 9. And so I think we need to be mindful of that. I understand that there are commercial rates, but still, if we had gone with the minimum 6, there would be customers achieving much greater savings, and we're not doing that for them. And so I think we should be mindful of trying to, keeping that into consideration and trying to increase or keep that that savings as large as we can. And in light of it being, I guess, a month difference in terms of us reaching our target, I just don't think it's worth it. So I'm comfortable with the all 6. Thanks.
Director Rennie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I forgot to mention last time is I keep thinking about where are we going in the future, not exactly where we are today only. And The two CCAs that started the earliest, they're out doing their own capital projects now. I think shortly, in a few months, we're going to start having a discussion of do we want to do our own capital projects, and that may then start requiring us to put something in a capital reserve. Again, I don't want to give, a big rate decrease or rate savings, let's call it rate savings, and then have to take it away in order to do what we might want to do in the future. So again, for me, I'm still advocating for the 5 for yet another reason which we hadn't put on the table yet, but maybe we forgot about that. But early in when we first started this, we had talked about, well, were we going to do capital projects or not? And we said, no, we've got to get started. We've got to get our reserves built. That may be something that we want to leave open if we're squeezing our finances to the point that we'd have to go take back some of the savings, which I'm trying to get away from. I don't want us to be oscillating, 6%, 5%, 3% back to 7%. I prefer to be a progression. I'm thinking ahead. What are the things that may be coming? And I think there's going to be a discussion of will we be building our own capital projects. So once that reserves fills, there may be other places. Maybe we don't want to do that. At that point, then we can increase the savings some more. But I just don't want to have to give a big savings and take it away because, I think it's a discussion we're going to have, and maybe it's likely we'll do it. The older CCAs are already doing their own capital projects. So one more thought for the future.
Okay, has anyone else got anything? Yes, Director Bruins.
So I'd like to ask a question of staff. I mean, I think, in looking at this 5 versus the 6, some would say, oh, the reserves are good enough, okay, and we're going to hit that, and so the trajectory is really good, and I'm hearing that. But the question that I have is, we set our reserve policy quite some time ago. Has staff taken a look at the reserve policy and looked at whether or not, given all the, I'm going to call it volatility, PG&E was going to do this, and then they went the other direction, then we have this whole RA thing, and then we have this, that, and the other thing, all these outside forces that are pushing on us. Have we considered whether or not the assumptions we made when we set our policy are still solid assumptions, or does this volatility cause us to rethink that at some point?
While Don Eckert comes up to the mic, let me start the answer.
I think you were just summoned. Pretty sure he wants you to say something.
If I may just, before we start. The Administration and Finance Committee did discuss reserves, and we are going to bring, and especially when it comes to setting aside money for programs, capital, et cetera, so there may be some refinements. So that's what we are going to be bringing back in the May timeframe for discussion for the next year's budget.
Yeah, thank you, Girish. And just to remind everyone what the current policy is. So we were shooting for a 50% of our annual operating expenses. That would be our target. If we hit 75% of that, then anything above that, we need to make an adjustment on rates or somehow give it back to the customers. If we hit the 25% of operating expenses, then we would want to make an adjustment somewhere with rates or something else to start building that reserve back up. So that's the current policy. And then to your comment, Girish, as well as Director Bruins, it's considering all where we were 6 months ago to where we are today, and 6 months from today will be different than where we are right now. It's always good to consider changes to that policy, but that's where we're at right now.
Thank you. Okay, yes, Director Chang.
I just want to add on to agree with Director Bruins. The uncertainty, there's a lot of uncertainty, and the most worries me is the political uncertainty in the nation, okay? I've been in this country 40 years. I never seen something like this, okay? It's worried me a lot, okay? So that's why I would like to see the reserve built up soon, and then so this organization can stay healthy in the future. So that's my main concern. And that's why I'm willing to switch the boat. I was being instructed to do, because as I said, I have a lot of explanation to write after tonight. Okay.
Director, excuse me, I am losing my mind. Director Givens.
Thank you. I'll make it quick. We did, as was indicated by the executive director, talk at the finance committee about it when we reach the what do you call it, reserve. That's when the money might get switched into a capital project pot. So that is definitely was part of the discussion, because it's a valid question. We do have a line of credit that we were talking about. If the world crashes, we had that. But I wanted to clarify with staff. My impression is the volatility that we've been seeing has been the RA and the PCIA. And those staff is expecting to be less volatile going forward. There will be more regulation and more ability to control those and predict those going forward. Am I in the ballpark there?
No. Now that PCIA is a relative black box. We're going through a regulatory proceeding to see if we can get more transparency and predictability in the long term on PCIA.
Right.
That is the biggest regulatory proceeding we're working with and through Cal CCA. So I would not say that the volatility of both those products, the PCIA and the RA, has gone down. Or we'll have a better ability to predict them in the next several months.
Okay, so
I also wanted to pull up this is in the next presentation, but since we're focused on it, it might be good to bring this slide up
The
now.
financials.
If we could have the presentation shown on the screen, please. Thank you.
yes, that's
So this would be
that's the one.
when we're presenting the mid-year budget, we were assuming the all 6%, and this would be our projection of hitting our targeted reserves. So as Don mentioned, by fiscal year 20, near the end of the fiscal year, we would be on our current projection above the max, and would be having a conversation of either lowering rates or having more in programs or capital projects, et cetera. So just to help with the conversation, I thought I'd pull this slide up. And just add one more volatility input you'll see in the mid-year budget is also on usage. So you'll see in the year-to-date financials, we're about 10% below our forecast in usage, and we'll make adjustments in this mid-year budget, but that's also another volatility we're considering.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Director Craig.
Well, I guess I just need to make it unanimous and say something.
Please do.
But the first thing I wanted to say was, let's assume we said 2%. Imagine what your marketing message could be. We've doubled your savings. And nobody can ever complain about that as a marketing message. And I also take a look at how many people are actually looking at their bill every single month. I don't know if we have a number of how many people just have these things on automatic bill pay and how many people actually go back and reconcile this thing and are going to look at, ooh, did I pay $101.58 or $102.22? I just don't think that that's really going to happen a whole lot. So those are the two things. I mean, but I do agree that 5% seems to be the number that a lot of people are comfortable with, and I like especially what Director Rennie was saying in terms of we don't want to move the rate, we don't want to take the rate away, and also we are being given a real opportunity here to maybe do something great in the future in terms of delivering carbon-free, cheap electrical power to the Silicon Valley, and if we're able to put our own infrastructure together somehow, a little extra money would go a long way in making this happen. So since everybody's spoken, can I make a motion?
I do want to just check in with Director Gridley. You are the only one who has not made a comment. I don't want to put you on the spot. You're not obligated, but I don't want to overlook the fact that if you'd like to make one, we'd be happy to hear from you. Okay, so please continue.
Can I make the motion that we adopt the all-5 rate structure?
And do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Yes.
I will support the motion, but the flaw to this particular motion is that we will not be able to tell the 200,000 customers that we did not raise their rates.
Exactly.
So, and I have yet to weigh in on my personal feelings. Like Director Yulo, do have some concerns about how many customers will see a rate increase under this proposal with the all five. Much like the discussion Director Givens summarized from the executive committee, we came to unanimous decision that the all six program was sufficient in meeting the reserve needs of SVCE, so I will not support your motion, but this conversation has been compelling tonight, and I do recognize the concerns and possible future capital needs we have. I believe at the all five, we can probably still match that. Yes, Director Bruins.
So I think in terms of adding another perspective onto this thing, I am definitely supportive of the motion. You know, again, I think PG&E customer, we're sitting here and saying we can't look at them and say we haven't raised a rate. But I'm going to tell you, is PG&E telling their customers not raising their rate?
No.
So, you know, the question is what's the yardstick you want to look at? And you can go very, very simply, again, you know, go back to this with the comment about 1%. 1%, we're still there. You came on board, we're still there. There's nothing wrong with that message. Go over here, bump it up 1%. That message is, you know what? Last time we promised you 1, now we're up to 2. We doubled it. You don't even talk about 1 and 2. You just say we've doubled it. You know what, guys? I really think we need to be looking at this more from a business point of view, because if we want to go and look at how it affects every little customer, and again, I think longer term, the more that we have in terms of our flexibility and the more we can inoculate ourselves against these unknowns for us and minimize the swings or the potential for swings in our customers, I think we are protecting our customers more from the swing thing, which again, you get that with 1, you get that with 2,
So
but you get better with 5.
I'm sorry, I am going to interrupt for just a minute, only because of process here. We have a motion, we have a second. I did make my comments because I had not made them in the rounds, but I would like to call for the vote and move forward with this. We have a number of people supporting both options. Let's just see how it falls out with the vote.
Chair Corrigan, if I could just make one note here.
Yes.
This motion would be adopting alternate resolution number 2018-04, which is the 5%, all 5% option. And it does take 7 votes. And it may be helpful to actually have roll call on this one only because we do have different points of view.
I very much appreciate the feedback.
The 7% is whether it's, the 7 votes, it doesn't make any difference if we're going for 5 or the 6%.
That is correct.
Just to pass anything.
That is correct.
Okay, so let's call for the vote, and if I can, have a roll call, please.
Yes. Director
Sorry,
Grilli?
Director Givens.
In order to pass the resolution, the motion pending, it will take 7 affirmative votes. And that would be true under either alternative.
Thank you. So again, this is for the all 5 option, 5% option. Director Grilli?
No.
Alternate Director Yulo?
No.
Director Smith?
No.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Alternate Director Chang?
Yes.
Director Rennie?
Yes.
Chair Corrigan?
No.
Vice Chair Abikoga?
Yay.
Director Harney?
No.
Director Gibbons?
No.
Director Bruins?
Yes.
Director Craig?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm slow at math here. So
That was 5, 4, and 7 against.
So do I have a motion for the alternative, all 6?
So moved.
And a second?
Mr.
Thank
Miller
you.
beat me to it. I'll be second.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to need 7 votes for this to pass, so I'd like to have a roll call vote, please.
Director Grilli?
Yes.
Alternate Director Yulo?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Alternate Director Chang?
No.
Director Rennie?
No.
Chair Corrigan?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abikoga?
Aye.
Director Harney?
Yes.
Director Gibbons?
Yes.
Director Bruins?
No.
Director Craig?
No.
And that carries 8-4, 4 against.
Thank you. Moving on. Item number 3 on your agenda is the SVCE 2018 SVCE mid-year budget. This report will be given by our new CEO, Balachandran.
Thank you. And over here, the one point I want to make before Don Eckert gives the presentation is, at the next meeting, I would like your indulgence to talk a little bit more about staffing. We haven't talked about staffing in this mid-year budget update. This is my 4th week here. I haven't had an opportunity to put my arms around some of the issues around staffing. So that's just a commentary that I'll bring you something at the April meeting. Don?
Thank you, Girish. All right, thank you, Girish and Madam Chairwoman, and good evening, fellow directors. So it makes sense to relook at the budget when our main revenue driver, which is rates, has just been changed. So
We could have the presentation, please. Thank you.
So just to hit the 3 main highlights of the mid-year budget changes, our operating surplus with the all 6% approach for rates will increase our operating surplus by $10.4 million. That means our balance is projected at the end of this fiscal year at $50.3 million available for reserves. As we talked about the all 6% option for this fiscal year budget, those rates would be implemented in April, so we would have 6 months of this fiscal year impacted by those rates. As well as we still have City Milpitas joining us on June 1st. And then also based on year-to-date performance, we did lower our current load projections by 5% on energy sales. So other assumptions, we have a 4+8 forecast, so we looked at our October through January actuals in considering any budget changes. We also then reforecasted the February to September remainder of the fiscal year. Pacific Energy Advisors, or PEA, updated our revenues as well as power supply costs. We did include in those power supply costs the updates you saw from Don, as far as the higher RA prices, as well as higher bucket 1 prices for unhedged positions. And then we also internally reevaluated our needs for other operating expenses. So just to look at this from a flow chart perspective of the changes to the budget. So our overall surplus increase of $10.4 million. This is a revenue-driven increase, so our revenues are going up by $14.6 million. We have the adopted budget that Don went through where we anticipated a decrease in rates, and now we're looking at the all 6% option, and we also have Milpitas coming online in June. On the power supply side, we're actually looking at a $1.2 million unfavorable adjustment, but that does include the increased budget to serve Milpitas. However, we did look at year-to-date performance as well as lowering our projected energy sales for the rest of this fiscal year, and that actually kept the power supply budget relatively flat. On the billing side, we're looking at a actual favorable increase of just a shade over $200,000. You might remember last month I mentioned where PG&E was actually going to lower their charges for billing services on a 44 cents per meter to 21 cents per meter. And then we have slightly higher data management charges based on 25,000 new accounts per month. Our other operating, or the expenses that would be in most control of the agency, we kept flat. So we looked at our employment expenses and we lowered those based on our year-to-date vacancies. We kept some float in there to accommodate changes to the table of organization that Girish alluded to earlier. Our general administrative expenses are slightly higher. This is to accommodate expenses that we're going to see with CalCCA. So we've got the PCIA coming up this summer. We have resource adequacy proceeding this summer. Just to give you an example, recently IOUs challenged the code of conduct that was passed a few years back to help protect CCAs. Just to defend that would be about $150,000. So every one of these that come up requires money for us to work with CalCCA on to support. And then marketing's budget is slightly higher. Most of that is to accommodate the Milpitas launch, as well as some incremental advertising expenses for brand recognition. On debt service, we're actually 2.9 million unfavorable there. That's a timing issue between paying off the revolving line of credit. So when we had the adopted budget, I was actually hoping to pay that off in September. Then we experienced some very unusually hot weather. We received some high bills from California Independent System Operator, and at the same time, we also then got a deposit call from CAISO. So I felt, let's get through the high power supply cost months and then pay off that. So that's just a timing issue. And then on programs, we increased that by $300,000, and that's a formula based on the increase in operating revenues. So our new programs budget would be about $5 million. And this next slide, a lot of numbers here. I'm not going to go through all those line items, but that just gives you an idea of where we stand. And on the bottom line, line number 24, you can see that our new projected balance available for reserves is $50.3 million. So just a few other slides to talk about revenues and expenses. So as I mentioned on energy sales or megawatt hours, you can see where on the blue line is the mid-year. The first 4 months are actual, and then from February onward is the forecast. And you can see where before Milpitas comes online, we actually did lower those energy sales numbers. Most of that's just based on a forecast we received from PEA. And I think it was just probably some outdated data from PG&E. So we just went ahead and updated that. And then also, if you look at the pie chart to the right, of the $253.5 million of operating revenues, so 71, close to 72% now is commercial and industrial. The pie chart before with the adopted budget was about 2/3 commercial, so now it's almost, with Milpitas online, it would be close to about 7/10 of every dollar is commercial and industrial related. On the cash outflow, it's about 2% increase in the mid-year budget versus the adopted, so relatively small change. And really the point on the two pie charts is to say that our expense composition is about the same. So 9/10 of every dollar in the adopted budget is related to power supply, and that didn't change with the mid-year budget. We talked about this slide in the previous discussion. So just to review, so the top line would be 75% of annual operating expenses would be our max. Our min is 25%, and our target is that green line of 50%. Assuming that we would have keep our load relatively flat next year, but then we have a full year of Milpitas. If we look at our current rates and we just raise those by 1.5% for inflation, that would be, and then our power supply costs, assuming where they are today and forecasting that out for the next couple of years. By the end of fiscal year 20, we would be having a conversation of what to do with the excess. But as all of you pointed out, there's going to be a lot of changes between now and before we reach fiscal year 20. So our next steps, staff recommends adoption of this mid-year budget change. We did review it with the Finance and Administration Committee. I don't see a lot of risk in this budget. We know what our pricing is for resource adequacy. We know we priced at the high end, any unhedged positions for Milpitas. So we have very little risk in this budget on that side. More the resource adequacy issues, the PCIA issues are going to be solved hopefully this summer, but not in time, I believe, to impact this budget. So we feel pretty confident with the numbers that we have for you tonight. And as Girish mentioned, we will be looking at a long-term staffing plan and hopefully bring it to the board for the next month's meeting. However, we have plenty of payroll float in this budget to accommodate the changes that we would make for this fiscal year. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, staff recommends adoption of the mid-year fiscal year 2017-18 operating budget.
Thank you for the report. Are there any questions? Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this? I don't even see members of the public here anymore. So I'll bring the conversation up here. If anybody has comments they'd like to make or are prepared to make a motion, I'll entertain that.
I can go straight to a motion. I move that we adopt the recommended changes for the mid-year.
Second.
Mr. Harney being meant. Damn.
Sorry, Director Ullo did have a comment. Would you like to make that comment before we vote?
I did. I wanted to just thank Mr. Eckert for the excellent report. felt the summary and the slides were right on target with what I wanted to see. And I want to just invite next month when the staffing plan is brought back, to think not only about internal staffing, but also about any additional investments we should make in legislative efforts. Because getting at what Director Gibbons was talking about and what Director Rennie was talking about in terms of mitigating uncertainty in the future to the extent that we can affect the world we're living in, this little world that we're operating in, all the better. So I would invite, I'd be very interested in seeing augmentations in that area. And I'm seeing nodding heads, so I don't know if that's a vote, but.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Can I have all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion passes. Your budget.
Through the chair, could I make a comment?
Yes, please.
I would like, I've never seen a finance director, your summary slide, okay? That kind of looks like an org chart. I've never seen it presented that way, and I just want to comment, I thought that was immensely helpful. It's actually a more effective way than just sometimes relying on the narrative. So I applaud you on that, and I would actually encourage you to continue to use that. I don't know where that came from, but thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, authorize the CEO to execute an agreement with freelance media buying for media strategy. This report will be made by our new CEO, Mr. Balachandran.
Yeah, I guess I'm in the handoff business today.
Okay.
To staff. I think this has come up at the last meeting, and we've updated our presentation to provide you more of a strategic look of the reasons why we're doing this and where we head in the future.
Terrific.
Good evening, Board. Pamela Leonard, Community Outreach Manager. If we could cue the slideshow, please. Thank you. So bringing back our ad contract with a few clarification points that were requested from the last meeting. And just wanted to review a couple of things in terms of our advertising strategy and how it relates to our broader communications plan. We did do a residential customer survey last fall, and one of those questions was about how customers absorb information, how they get their news, and that showed that there's a whole variety of sources. Everything from print news with the Mercury News and community papers were high up there, but there's also Nextdoor was fast growing, as I'm sure all of you know, social media, city websites, and local TV news. So that just relates to how we've approached communications as needing a blended strategy that can try to reach customers however they consume their information. And with this campaign, we are looking at 2 of those aspects, which is print is one component, but digital is a very, very important component to this, where a majority of the funds are going because we are able to target customers more effectively. And that's going to be a continuing growing strategy, is utilizing digital advertising platforms. So here's a look at the campaigns that this particular contract would be managing. We, of course, have Welcome Milpitas, so very important for us to get out in front of Milpitas community members. When we learned a lot of lessons from our launch last year, and one of those things is if this was real, I'd see it in my paper or on TV, or I would see it all over the place, right? So the ads were very great at aligning to the look of other communications that go out. We also have our Bike to the Future event on May 5th. So a very exciting event where it's turning into not only the scholarship competition, but an opportunity for just our customers from all our communities to come and learn more about electric bikes and other bike-related initiatives. So we want to advertise that and get people out there. And then, of course, general awareness. So the ongoing need to let our customers know that we are here, that we have benefits we're bringing to the community. One of the things that we have as an ongoing educational need is understanding your bill. So this would pay to promote that understanding your bill video and other resources to our customers. So here's just a breakdown of how this contract is broken down by these 3 campaigns. And as you can see, 60% is focused on the digital, and only 40% is allocated to our local print publications. So I mentioned the success of digital and having last year's campaign to learn from, And our digital campaign was a combination of social media and Google AdWords, or Google Display Network. And the results of that showed how effective this campaign was. And the industry standard is a 0.5% for a click-through rate, and we had 2.85%. So we have a lot of information that we were able to learn from that, as well as information on how we'll effectively be able to advertise future programs based off of customer interest in what we're doing and other things that align to what they're searching and how it aligns with what we do. And then print, we have 10 identified local papers, of course, a combination of some community papers that are part of the Bay Area News Group, but the other half are independent papers that have been going strong, especially serving the South County, Los Altos, Mountain View, so we have those papers as well. And those, the total circulation numbers of those publications is 145,000. And our target audience. So there's a demographic in particular who still reads papers, and they're an important constituency to reach out to through that means. But we also have non-English customers that we also really want to reach. We have all of our resources available in Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese is being added for Milpitas, as well as being one of the most highly spoken languages other than English at home throughout our county. And we are able to target ads in those languages when we do the digital ads, and also provide for opportunities in the future to work with multi-ethnic publications. And that is my presentation.
Any questions? Yes. Director Chang.
So what is the budget for this one?
So this is a total contract for not to exceed $80,000.
80,000?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what would be the goal to achieve?
What is the goal?
Yeah, what is the goal we are looking for to achieve?
So there's, let me pull up my stop board, sorry. So we have several key performance indicators that we would be tracking through this. The goal overall, I mean, we have awareness is one, event attendance is another, as well as we do have a community meeting set aside for the city of Milpitas. We'd also want to drive attendance to that, as well as let customers be aware of the change. And so, you know, we'd be tracking the number of opt-outs. We didn't see any, and I had this in the report, I believe, but we didn't see any correlation between the digital advertising we did last year and any increase in traffic to the opt-out page on our website, so that was good. But we would be tracking, you know, website traffic as well. So we just want to really drive people to finding out more information about Silicon Valley Clean Energy so they can know that we are a benefit to their community.
Okay, my impression in Cupertino, not many people really read the Cupertino Courier. So when you're talking about paper circulation, I don't know, in Nassau Hill or Palo Alto, it's different. But in Cupertino, most people don't read it. So if you advertise there, I'm wondering what kind of result you are going to get. And then so my next question, how do you gauge the success or not? If we are going to spend this kind of money, how do we know we get our money worth? You have any standard or any way to?
So that's what the circulation numbers are for when it comes to print, because with print, you know, clearly, unlike digital, you can't track clicks, right? So you, in that industry, have to go off of circulation numbers, and we do have a breakdown of circulation numbers by print publication. So those are the number of households that that publication is being delivered to. And then, again, based off of the survey information, the survey we did still see that more than 20% read the paper of our customers.
And if I may just jump in to help move this conversation along. This year, the revenues are expected to be $250 million. This is an $89,000 marketing budget, so relatively small.
Sure.
I'm not downgrading how important $80,000 is, but I want to put it in context. Secondly, this does give the media buyer the ability to purchase digital in markets where print is weak and print in market where digital may not be as effective. So it's really an overarching media program, and I don't want us to get too bogged down in what papers the media buyer may be buying in, because I think that will be the discretion of the buyer. Should the buyer make poor choices, I assure you we won't be renewing their contract.
Okay. All right. My one suggestion is what I find out in the past If you, especially with ethnic group, if you're working with their festival date and then the event, you will get more result that way. For example, Chinese, right? Chinese New Year, generally they have a big celebration. If you work with the Chinese newspaper on those certain period of time, you will get more result instead of regular time.
Great feedback. Anybody else have comments? Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question. In regards to the online media campaign, how do we use the YouTube channel where we post this meeting and where we post the executive sessions? How do we use that for ad placement? And if we are, how is that tracking?
So last year we did actually have a 15-second video ad that we did promote on digital, and that was pushed out through Facebook, and that's part of those click-through rates that we saw. I'd have to go back and pull the actual view rate on the video, but it came in right at the tail end of the campaign. So it doesn't directly go to our YouTube channel. It's more like it's embedded within the digital advertisers that we're working with.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, Director Yulo, Director Miller, and Director Gilly.
I had a simple question. I heard a rumor that our rates are going to be 6% less than PG&E's. And would you envision any marketing kind of pivoting off of that, or will that be just, we'll update our materials to reflect that, but we're not going to like promote it?
Well, we have actually prepared for you all, which will be emailed out to you after tonight's decision, some key messages that we want to stay focused on as an organization when it comes to our rates. One of those is not to run wild with the 6% because, as Director Rennie pointed out, when you average that out against the total bill, it looks more like 3%. And most folks that we talk to on a regular basis are looking at the total. So we want to stay focused on the total cost you pay with us versus PG&E. And again, marketing the percentage, that can change year to year. And so we're very aware of that and want to stick with the message of being carbon-free and less than PG&E.
Thanks. Director Miller.
Mine was just a quick comment. I know when we started up, we did get an interview with the IJ and the World Journal, which are the two dominant Chinese papers. I am led to believe, at least within my citizenry and some in Cupertino, that paper is probably more well-read than the Saratoga News. Different people, of course. But I am wondering, as you look at the print material and you look at interview follow-ups, can we somehow include the World Journal and the Independent Journal?
Thank you. And Director Grilli. Oh, would you like to respond? I'm
Well,
sorry.
I actually I just wanted to point out that this is just one advertising contract with these specific campaigns. I do have regular conversations with the World Journal, for example, and I have, there's some other ethnic media groups that have specific separate packages that we work with that are not part of this package. But as you just approved in our mid-year budget, we have other advertising campaigns that we will be working on. So these are definitely in consideration. So thank you for bringing that up. It's very important.
Thank you. And Director Grilli.
So as you are talking about launching out in Milpitas and reaching our residents and our businesses, the biggest concern I have is I find that the Milpitas Post is not going to be a very effective tool in our city. As I'm sure our economic director will tell you, it has deteriorated and it's just thrown into our driveways, and you'll find that a good percentage of those are never even picked up. So I don't really, I'm just concerned about how are we going to reach the residents and the businesses in Milpitas effectively, and I don't think using the Milpitas Post is going to be an effective tool. And I understand that, it's just, as the chair points, it's just one tool, but this is going to be a big change in Milpitas, and I want to make sure that we have an effective campaign.
If I can suggest, would you please stay in contact with her about the media strategy in Milpitas? I think it'll be important that you're in the loop of what's going on, and your feedback would be absolutely welcome. Well, I mean, that goes for everybody, obviously, but particularly given the sensitivity of the rollout here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate all of your input. You all know your communities the best, right? And If there's other ways that we can flex the dollars that we had allocated, we can definitely do that we have that flexibility in this contract. You're not, buying these ads tomorrow, but we have room to be flexible. And also earned media and traditional pitching and developing relationships with reporters is a key aspect of what I do as well. So we'll be looking for that as an ongoing tactic as well.
If there's no other comments, I think Director Bruins is ready to make a motion.
I move to authorize CEO to execute agreement with freelance media buying for the media strategy.
I sense there's a race to get a second on my right-hand side here. This is fantastic. I love this. This is not Jeopardy, folks. Okay, so I'd like to call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Chair, so you're aware, it's not in terms of really the race for the second. It's the bets on what time we're going to get out of here.
I got you covered. All right. So the next item number 5, is the CEO report. I'm having a hard enough time making sure I'm pronouncing his name right. It's embarrassing to mispronounce CEO.
That's why we should go first name.
I'm trying to formalize as out of respect for this body, since the last year you've all called me Director Corrigan, but feel free to call me Courtney. It never hurts my feelings. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. Would you please start by properly pronouncing your name for the entire board and our public who's watching and listening?
It'll be my pleasure. My name is Girish Balachandran, and I want to start off by thanking all of you for hiring me. It's been a real pleasure to be at SVCE. This is my 4th week here. I also want to start off my comments by thanking our staff. During this period, without having a permanent CEO, it's always difficult and stressful, and I want to thank all the staff for doing an excellent job in keeping all these different initiatives moving forward. And of course, an extra shout out for Don Eckert, who took on double duty responsibilities. Thank you very much, Don.
Yeah.
Yep.
That does it.
So I have met or spoke to all of you, other than you, Alternate Director Chang, but I have spent some time with Director Sinks. It's been a real pleasure. I've got input from all of you. I'll continue to meet with you to get to know you better, so I can get to know what your issues are, where you want SVC to head, how we can make our meetings more effective, how we can make our entire capacity to achieve SVC's mission more effective. In my 3.5 weeks here, I have met with several board members from Cal CCA, so with the CEOs of other community choice aggregation agencies also. And I wanted to take about 60 days to complete what I'd call assessment. That's maybe too formal a word, but just getting a lot of input from a variety of people, and then of course figuring out the kind of direction we need to be heading in. What I see so far in 4 weeks, from a mission standpoint, it's fantastic to see a board that's focused on such an uplifting and aspirational mission, and I see that in our staff too. So I don't see any issues with mission. In terms of the big picture of where we are on legislative and regulatory, just like we had a few comments, Director Yulo, you talked about we need to be putting some resources there. That's a big deal. I think we've identified the gap. Now it's a matter of actually implementing and closing the gap. Power supply, very similar. We've identified what we need to do. We're working to complete that. On customer programs, we've had some history of maybe not going in a straight line. We've zigged and zagged, but essentially trending upwards to try and get as much input as we can from the community and staff to come up with something really innovative and creative. I've met with the chair of the Customer Program Advisory Group, had a very effective meeting with him, and I'll continue to work closely with him, so I feel good about where we're heading with programs. Underlying all this, there's one piece that we really need to work on, which is to get our staffing up to speed. Obviously, we wanted to wait till I came in before we filled in the staffing gap, but there's a pent-up demand, both from you. You want us to move faster in many areas. I think from a staff perspective also, they want to get that, achievement going. So that'll be one of the first things that I do. I've talked to Hillary already about getting some additional resources on the legislative and regulatory side. And next month, first I'll bring it to the executive committee and then to the entire board, at least the start of a longer-term staffing plan. Last, I'd like to bring to your attention, if you have any questions on the CEO report, I'd be happy to answer it. The only item I'd emphasize over there is the CSMF4 budget award that we got. This is the first of many awards we hope to be getting on the financial side. We are a new agency, and we're very proud to have received that award. With that, I'll end my comments.
How many other CCAs have gotten that award?
That would be none.
That was a goose egg, since the camera couldn't get back there. Just us. Thank you for your report. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, I'll move on to agenda item number 6. That's the executive committee report, and I'll just summarize that the committee met on February 27th and selected myself and Vice Chair Margaret Abakoga to serve as the chair and vice chair. We have set an ongoing meeting date. It'll be the 4th Tuesday of every month at 11:30 a.m. in the SVCE offices. The meetings are obviously public, and the agenda will be available on the SVCE website. Additionally, the committee discussed the proposed 2018 billing rates that we voted on earlier tonight and the advertising budget that we also recently just approved. That concludes my report. We had a very effective meeting, and we're excited to meet again next month. We'll talk about staffing, it sounds like. All right, any other comments or questions? Sorry, I don't mean to go too fast, but the next item is the Finance and Administration Committee report from Director Craig.
Okay, so we met on March the 9th and selected myself to serve as chair and Director Miller to serve as the vice chair. Our quarterly meeting dates were set, and the committee reviewed the fiscal year 2017-18 mid-year operating budget. We took a look at the agreement with Mayer Accounting, or Maher, close enough. And we also got a sneak peek of that budget award that was just mentioned. So again, congratulations. Staff provided a year-to-date financial review, and the committee discussed the potential of establishing a line of credit. And our next meeting will be May the 30th at 11 a.m. at our beautiful SVCE offices in Sunnyvale.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Craig? No, seeing none, then I'm going to move on to the legislative report, which will be given by Director Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Legislative Ad Hoc Committee met on March 6th. The committee discussed updates on key regulatory matters, including Resolution E4907 and Integrated Resource Planning. The committee also reviewed SVCE's legislative platform and suggested the changes presented to the board tonight in consent calendar item 1G. These changes include the initiation of an annual legislative review workshop each October, where the platform will be discussed and updated as needed for the upcoming legislative year. SVE staff also provided an overview of key CCA relevant bills, and staff and the committee members outlined a plan for a day of outreach in Sacramento. The next meeting date for the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee has not yet been set, but will be scheduled before the Sacramento Outreach Day in order to provide for planning and preparation. That concludes my report for the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee.
Fantastic. Any questions? I do want to make sure everybody knows you're welcome to join us in Sacramento, all of you who are available. It'll be a great trip. Now we're moving on to the board member announcements and directions for future possible agenda items. Are there any comments or announcements? Yes, Director Bruins.
I just want to do a shout out. I should have mentioned this earlier when we did the CEO report, but the Bike to the Future, when you look at this and you look at how many teams I mean, this is really super duper exciting. And I have to say, as a Los Altos council member, the fact that all 3 of our high schools are teaming, putting a team together is pretty phenomenal. So they rock.
I'm also going to give you a shout out because there is no team from Los Altos Hills after all my big talk, but I wish you luck. And I really do hope you succeed. Anyway, the city of Los Altos Hills can support our local high school would be my pleasure.
Los Altos Hills goes to the 3 high schools in Los Altos. So you know what?
Here,
I said,
here.
We're 2/3, we're a team.
Fantastic. Any other announcements? Director Yulo, and then you and Director Chang.
And I also should have done this during the CEO report, but Girish, did you want to introduce the new staff member that we have in the audience to the board?
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned her in the report, and she's here. right?
Yes, so Julie, why don't you come on up, and I can... Sorry, took me by surprise here. So Julie has joined our team. She's a community outreach coordinator. We had, you can read the report. Well, she's completed a Climate Corps Fellowship at the City of Sunnyvale, where she is focused on conducting environmental outreach and assisting with various sustainability programs. So she joined us last week.
Almost 2 weeks ago.
Almost 2 weeks ago. And got to know her a little better. We had dinner together today. So she is going to be introducing us to some different kind of food for the team. Some Argentinian food too. But Julie, would you like to say a few words on what you plan to be doing for us?
Put on the spot. Yeah, we have a lot of Earth Day events coming up, so we'll be tabling at all the different community events in many of our cities. And we'll be doing outreach I'll be focusing on outreach for Milpitas and sorry. Oh, yes, we definitely need volunteers for those Earth Day events. So if you all have any insights on who would be available or groups to reach out to, that would also be, helpful.
Julie, welcome. We're all an email away. So now you know where we are and you know what cities we represent. So when you're coming to our towns, I hope you'll reach out to individual board members and invite them to participate and help you find those volunteers.
Great.
We're glad you're part of the team.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Director Yulo, no, you're finished?
Well, I mean,
please.
And we should have Dennis stand up to acknowledge that his new promotion.
Congratulations, Dennis. Thank you. Director Smith.
Well, I am proud to represent the fine city of Sunnyvale and to know that Julie found a place here, not so very far away, actually not far away at all, because it's the SVCE is headquartered in Sunnyvale. And I also wanted to give a big shout out to the staff who attended Sunnyvale's Climate Action Plan 2.0 event, where we did a big event on Saturday the 3rd to figure out what Sunnyvale and people in the region could do to help address climate change. And I would like to send out to the staff for distribution to the rest of the board members. We came up with a lot of ideas about what to do, and members of the community and the member cities of this organization are definitely members of the community, can go in and vote on ideas that they like and flag ideas they like and frankly steal ideas that you like to help us reach our climate action goals here in Silicon Valley. So I'll do that, and I know that Andrea was a table captain, I think, and
Pamela.
Pamela. So I know that the staff came out and supported us, and sorry, I'm so embarrassed now, but yeah, thanks, Pamela. And so those of you who staffed that and helped with that, really a big shout out from Sunnyvale for helping. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Chang.
I just want to announce and invite all the council member and then also mayor to join Cupertino and Santa Clara hosting the G50 Global Smart City event on April 6th. Our special guest speaker is Hyperloop CEO Dirk Auburn, so we already signed up. And then we will have a mayor panel to discuss what the issue each city facing or what the solution they have done to share. And last week we have a press conference here from your council member Michelle
Wu?
Yeah, Michelle Wu came.
Fantastic.
And then she mentioned that we never thought of, Nassau Hill had this kind of problem. I mean, to implement the smart city, because you have a terrain, you have a lot of hill,
Yep.
and you have a lot of trees, and your house is so far apart because you have 1 acre lot. I never thought about it because Nassau Hill is so close. I never thought that would be a problem for you guys to implement the smart city. So we invited also with the MIT professor, the academia, the industry, NVIDIA will come and speak. So there's a lot. So I'm inviting all of you. It will be free of charge for the elected official, your mayor or your vice mayor, your council member. So please bring them over here. And almost every week from now until April 6th, every Wednesday afternoon, we'll have a press conference. You're welcome to show up here and then to share your idea.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, just a quick
Please.
thank you to all of the staff at Silicon Valley Clean Energy for hosting the open house last week. It was a really great social event and a great way to connect with some of the staff members and the new staff member that just joined. I also wanted to call the attention to the community that's watching online that there's a small startup company in Gilroy called Symmetry, and they're going to be launching a new product, and the new product is called the Energy of Things, and it's kind of hard for me to explain because I don't quite understand it, but it's basically an approach that introduces an economy that provides a tokenized approach for becoming smarter with the utilization of energy. To achieve this, they're developing innovative technologies that combine the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence in your home, and blockchain technology to allow everybody to implement smart energy. And they've coined the synergy of these technologies, the energy of things. So if you're interested in attending that, that's March 21st, Wednesday at the Mosaic Restaurant in downtown San Jose. Thank you.
Thank you. If I see no other comments, I'm going to close with just a few of my own. So first up, before the meeting started, I did suggest that if anyone is not happy with their seating arrangement, please send me an email. We just kind of winged it tonight and moved to the middle, but if you don't like where you're seated or don't like the person you're seated next to, you don't have to be public. You can just send it to me, and I'll do my best. Secondly, I really do want to welcome our new CEO, Mr. Balachandran. I'm going to keep practicing it. Both Girish and I welcome your feedback on tonight's meeting. We are working hard to streamline our board meetings and maximize the efficiency. We hope that this will allow the JPA board to focus on policy discussions, and our new CEO has already made himself and the staff available to answer any questions you may have in advance of future board meetings about the packet so that you can be thoroughly versed on that evening's topic, answer any questions or concerns you have in advance so that the dialogue can flow like it did tonight. If you don't like how it worked tonight, please feel free to share that feedback with me. I can take critical feedback as well as positive. I love to hear positive strokes as well. No, I'm going to get us there. I'm going to close right now by just giving one final shout out to the staff of SVCE and our new CEO. You made tonight's meeting possible for me as the new chair, and I can't thank you enough. I look forward to working with all of you in 2018. And with that, I adjourn the meeting.